You are in the How Oldcastle Found. We actually had to remove the dollar, the true valued amount in just a few clicks because some executives found it a little bit, they were a little nervous that we put an actual number up there originally. But suffice it to say, it was in the 7 digits, okay? And I'm going to walk you through exactly how we kind of came upon that revelation in just a few minutes. I'm Paul Lisborg. I want to thank you for attending, first of all. It's always an honor privilege to speak at a Tableau conference. I also want to thank Tableau personnel for having me out, specifically Laurie and Morris McEdward, and my team, a Tableau team of Blake Wyrock, Brookley, and Crawford Keys. They are they really do help. Tableau is more than just a vendor to us, they're our partner. Today's agenda, real quick, wanted to demonstrate to you how Oldcastle has traditionally consumed data, how we now consume data more effectively with the use of Tableau, and specifically how we looked at our sales and inventory visualization to make it a lot more effective. But first, a little bit of history. My name is Paul Lisborg. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I was first introduced to Tableau by the gentleman over here that you might know. He's taking a picture, Dan Murray. He wrote really the Bible on how to use Tableau Your Data. And I know that he sold me my first copy, but I also believe that I was his very first sale way back in 2009. I started using Tableau version 4, if that kind of dates me. And I'm a charter member of ATUG, which is North America's first Tableau users group. Began using Tableau with Noonan Utilities, small municipal just south of the airport, and then started to work with Oldcastle in 2013. So just 3 years into my journey with Oldcastle. I remember that because it was on November 1st, 2013. It was a Friday. They had server for several months, but had not created not one visualization. So they hired me on Friday, just so happened to coincide with all of the VPs of finance coming in the following week, and I had to build out several visualizations that following week. So we started deploying visualizations literally days upon my arrival. I always have to show this because this is the visualization that is probably most closely associated with me. If you went to any one of the Tableau 10 road shows, you probably saw this and wanted to know, well, why would somebody create something like this? But this was my idea of the perfect viz. And this goes back to my last year's presentation when I was talking about web authoring. And so really there is no perfect visualization. What you do is you try to answer 80 to 90% of the questions, and then what we do is we allow a number of users to use Tableau web authoring to answer any additional questions and to drill down. So once again, that's kind of the one that's most associated with me. If you stick around to the end, I've also been working on this year's rendition of the unicorn. A little bit about Oldcastle. Probably the response I get the most is, oh, you work for Oldcastle, I love your IPA. Well, it's Oldcastle and not Newcastle. We're not the beer company. We are the largest manufacturer of building materials in North America. We have about $18 billion in revenue, yearly revenue. We have just my little slice of the pie, which is the pavers, the custom kitchens, the veneers, the outdoor veneers, is about $2 billion. So that's a pretty big, hefty company. We're in a lot of things that you see, you just don't know the name. Our first North American operation was opened in 1978. We're actually wholly owned by a company in Ireland called CRH. And CRH is Ireland's biggest company as well. So that means that going back to my beer analogy, we're bigger than Guinness. We primarily have 4 divisions in North America. Primary materials, which is your asphalt, sand, they quarry things. We have a glass division. Precast, which makes the manhole covers and the big retaining waterworks projects. And then masonry and hardscapes, which is our little division, once again, $2 billion, that make products such as these known. We like to refer to it as sexy concrete. We have grown through a series of acquisitions. We now have 223 facilities all across North America and Canada. As you'd expect, our product doesn't travel well. So we, in essence, have to make it close to where we're shipping it. Okay. However, with that growth, we still have a very data-driven entrepreneurial culture within each one of those 223 facilities. So we have to accommodate that. This is how we traditionally consumed data. And I see already people shaking their heads. They've seen this multiple times, typically in spreadsheets and in PDFs. And they're usually generated once a month, usually under a great deal of effort, hours and hours of work. And then to provide probably analysis for 5 to 10 minutes, and then it's thrown, it's forgotten about. So A, it's not timely. B, it takes a tremendous amount of effort just to generate reports like that. I also brought this behemoth, and this is the end of month financial reporting. You can see, now I have not counted, we don't put page numbers on this, probably because it'd be too depressing too. But this is what our financials look like on the end of every month. And in it, it contains a lot of the information I'm going to show and share with you today. But to find it, good luck. Now some of the accountants probably could turn quickly to it, but we get this book about 3 months after the month-end close. So it's, once again, it's not timely. It's pixel perfect. We'll never get away from generating month-end reports, but you're not going to make true intelligent decisions based on this. So this is how we consume data today. In the front is a dashboard that links to a portal page that links to all of our Tableau dashboards. On the left, it's just a simple map. One of the first things I did was, when I came to Oldcastle, I knew that we'd want to know where the product was being made and how much facilities were selling. So the first thing I did was geocode something very, very simple, just geocode all of our facilities, all of our 223 facilities. That's a very popular viz, because even salespeople, when they're visiting a place that they're not familiar with, I also put in phone numbers. So if they get lost, they can call the division or the facility they're going to and quickly be able to find it. On the left is just a sales dashboard that I've created. It has numerous KPIs on it and shows us just how sales are occurring every day, so that people can view that on a more timely basis. We went from looking at sales on 45 pages being delivered to us, 45 pages a day in sales. It was shown by business, by division, by facility. And now we are consuming things in a much, actually a quicker way. You're able to look at the data, make a decision, see where the problem areas are, make a phone call, and quickly move on. The beauty with this is that it's just not limited to dashboards. We're also, with our sales reps, building mobile dashboards so that they can take them into their stores that they're servicing and quickly see what, before they even get to the store, what's out of stock, what's been selling well, what their pain points are. Our philosophy is very much one of Hans Rosling. He presented at Tableau a few years ago. Having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy, and I kind of think he used that for a reason. They want to enjoy and understand. You want the dashboards to be compelling. And so with every dashboard that we create, we try to first answer 4 questions: who, what, when, and where. Just right out of the gate. Nothing overly ambitious, but those are the 4 questions we try to answer when the dashboards are created. This is the daily sales dashboard, and you can see this is a true, real, live dashboard. I have, your eyes in the back aren't failing you. I have blurred out those because those are real numbers. And this is kind of a standard dashboard. This is what we like to present. It's branded with the Oldcastle green. You can see, anytime you're really talking about sales and budget, there's almost a perfect chart to use, and that's a bullet graph, because you can see exactly where you are to budget. The lines here are your budget. This is actual, and then we go ahead and color it in. If you're falling short of your budget, we color it red. If you're over, we color it green. That's also quite an interesting story. When we first introduced this, it was the winter of 2014. If anybody knows anything about the weather and the winter Atlanta had that year, it was horrible. And we don't, as you'd expect, sell a whole lot of pavers when it's cold and kind of miserable outside. So this chart looked awful because it was just red. And so we kind of stepped back and said, okay, if you're within 5% of making your budget, we're going to color it yellow or gold. So that kind of gained more acceptance. Because we have a lot of accountants still, we kind of like to put the cross tab at the bottom. We don't, it helps the adoption rate. So we try to limit it to no more than 2 or 3 graphs at the top, and then have some type of cross tab. Of course, it's fully interactive. There's hovers. You click on any one of those divisions, and it will filter the map and filter the detail as well. The beauty with this is we have also invoked row-level security onto all of our extracts, meaning that if I am looking at this and I am out west, I'm only going to see my western divisions. I'm only going to see the data that I have access to. And we do that with a series of putting you in an AD group and then putting row-level security, actually building what I call baking it in to the extract. And this is really why we're here today, because this was my first attempt to look at sales and inventory and try to perform some type of analysis on that. And you know, I use a standard Pareto chart, which is up there on the left. It's once again highly interactive. I basically kept all the constructs of how we build dashboards, limiting it, and this was pretty much a colossal failure. I don't know if it just was not telling the right story. There was just too much going on, and I knew that there was value in telling where our inventory stood against our sales. So I wasn't really willing to give up on that. So I took this and kind of did a makeover, and so that's what today's journey is about, is how I took the viz and through a series of 5 rather easy steps, transformed it into something that's much widely more accepted. So with that, I'm going to, if my technology works, there we go. All right, so the first thing I did was take a look at the Pareto. Now, for those of you that have not used Pareto, it in essence is showing you what you have, in this case, what you have sold, and it's sorting it, and then it's showing you the percentage contribution of all the sales. So the beauty with the Pareto is that the theory behind Pareto is that 20% of your activity spawns 80% of the revenue, okay, or of a benefit. And so we wanted to see just how that related to our sales and our inventory, okay? Anybody here used a Pareto chart before? Okay, about half the room, okay? I'm going to just demonstrate real quickly how this all works. So all I'm going to do is pull out invoice revenue, and I'll make it a bar chart instead of an area. So that's all of invoice revenue, okay? It's the sum of invoice revenue. But then I want to see it by item. How much revenue am I getting per item? I'm going to add all members. And so this is showing a graph for every item that we sell and how much revenue was generated over the last 12 months. Easy, right? I'm going to then do a real quick sort. And now it's sorted from the highest to the lowest based on sales. Once again, very, very easy. Now you can see this is the first thing you should notice is you see this curve is very, very steep and it trails off. So there's items way out here that we haven't sold anything, okay? So a lot of items. Don't know how many items at this point, but we're going to answer that question as well. So I get to Pareto, very, very simple. It's actually 3 clicks away. I can remember Andy Kriebel, another Zen master, showed this to us at ATUG one year. I thought, God, I'm never going to get this. But when you break it down, it's only in 3 clicks. So I'm just going to take some of invoice revenue, and I've created 2 charts. Very, very easy. I'm going to take that second one, and I'm going to perform a quick table calculation and do a running total. Now it's starting to look a little bit like what I need. Except this now is showing me sales, running total of sales. That's not what I want. I want the running total of the percentage of sales, okay? So one more quick click into that second pill, and I'm going to edit the table calculation. And I'm going to go add a secondary calculation, and I'm going to use the percent of total. There we have it. Not a Pareto yet, because it's all on different axes. I can remember the first time I was showing this to someone, it was just a few weeks ago, they go, Pareto, is that a new chart type in 10? And I said, no, we've always had it. It's just a dual axis. It's very, very easy to use. So I'm going to just change the formatting of this just a little bit because I don't want a lot of bars on top of bars, right? So I'm going to change this second bar graph to a line. Really don't need the color green. And now I just grab the corner, pull it over, bam, Pareto. Now what is this saying? I also put in a reference line here, and I'll just remove it and re-add it. I want to add my reference line, and it's going to be a constant, and it's going to be at 80%. At this intersection here, that's showing you exactly what is generating 80% of your revenue. Everything beyond that mark is just 20%. Okay? Now at this point, I still don't know how many items I'm talking about, and I don't know, how each item is ranked. But that's once again real easy too. I created a ranked calculation. And this is going to be the easiest calculation you'll ever perform. You just use index. And all that is saying is, on the window, where do I fall? what rank am I on that? That's all it is. So I'm going to pull rank into my tooltip. And now, as I hover over each item in the Pareto, it's giving me where that item ranks. So now I'm looking at the 111th item. Let's go to that intersection here at roughly 80%. And I'm showing the rank is 273. That means I'm selling 273 items that constitute 80% of my sales. Okay? But I don't know out of what. If it was 273 out of 280, I'd feel pretty good about that. Okay? But you can see from the slope, unfortunately, that's not the case. There's a lot more to go. So I want to know that, and I want to be able to show the user what that ranking is and out of how many items. The second calculation I have is total distinct number of SKUs. And all I'm doing is counting my item numbers, a distinct count of my item numbers, and then I'm totaling it to give me a total number that's represented on the window. So no matter what filter I have in place, it's going to calculate, whether it's on the company level or on a division level, how many total items am I looking at on that sheet, on that page. So now I'm going to pull that over into Tooltip as well. And now I can see, as I drag it up and down, I have both the ranking 264 out of 2,012 SKUs. I'm not showing this on a global company-wide basis, but to suffice it to say, we have 139,000 SKUs. And the Pareto chart doesn't change much from this, okay? We have a tremendous amount of of sales that we're selling one time and selling small quantities and then never selling again, okay? So this chart I would modify just a little bit because I really don't need to see, in fact, it's almost pointless because there's so many SKUs. I'm just going to hide. I'm just going to not show the header. And so now I have my Pareto. As I hover over this, I'm going to see what the item is, how much, where it ranks, and then how much I had in sales for the last 12 months. So I should mention at this time, the way that I set this data set up is I wanted the user to be able to choose between periods of time, to select between distinct periods of time. And I did that with a parameter. And so you change this, you can change it. This is looking at last 12 months. I put in month to date, but you would never really, you might evaluate it month to date. I just put it in there. You'd really either look at it year to date if you're far enough into your year, last 12 months, or prior years. So you can select at what level you want to see each one of those sales. So if I change it from last 12 months to prior year, it changes the graph somewhat, okay? So I'm going to leave that to the last 12 months for the moment being. And I do want to discuss that because that's a pertinent point too. The parameter that I use an integer value, 1 through 5, and then I label it as month to date, year to date, last 12 months, prior year, and lifetime. I used to never do this. I would have used a text parameter and I would have called it month to date, year to date in my text, okay? And so that when I went over to create my calculated field, which is called invoice revenue, I could say when month to date, then use invoice, the sum of invoice month to date. And it was self-documenting, okay? I've had a total 180 experience on that. And I'll get into that in just a second. For those of you that know me, I am crazy about formatting calculations. if I'm trying to edit somebody else's book and there's some if then else if, and it's spreading across the wall, it's almost impossible to read. So I'm crazy about indentation, making sure that each line, you can read that line. Okay. The only thing that's in this that you couldn't really read is, and that was my reason for using the way that I used to do it, was I used to say when MTD, then use the month to date. Let me give you a little story. If you can use numbers rather than text in any Tableau calculation, your dashboard is going to render much, much more quickly. And I have a perfect case, and it's a 10-second scenario. We used to use in row-level security on a 220 million row POS data from Home Depot, and we used to evaluate the answer as true as text or false in text. And then we would look at each one of those rows and say, should we render that row to the user? If you did nothing to that extract but to pull over the number of records and drop it on using that logic, it took somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 seconds to render, which is crazy. We changed it to a Boolean and say, are you a member of this? Or if, we didn't use an if statement, we just used a Boolean operator. And so it rendered, it was coming back as either true or false as a Boolean. Same data set, you pull it over, drop it in, less than a second. So you have to be smart about your calculations. Now, this data set probably wouldn't have been affected, but it's a good idea that if I can use a number rather than text, even though it's not documented as well, it's going to render a lot quicker for you. Now, that's the hardest part of this whole talk. So if you didn't get any of that, you can look at this, because the Pareto, it takes like a little bit of practice. There is a secondary calculation on this, but the rest of this is kind of fun. So I was determined to keep the Pareto chart. I think it added a lot of context to what was being spoken to about the data. But the second thing I added that I didn't have before was the headers. And I'm just going to show you how this dashboard, I kind of kept adding to this dashboard. So the second thing that I did, and I'll just go to that sheet, is display the overall numbers in the top. Invoice revenue, quantity on hand, and the value of that on hand. Very, very simple. Something they had in the old visualization, but it wasn't as stark. Okay? So that was once again, very, very easy, just adding a summary to that. To answer the what is stop number 3. And this is, what do I have the most inventory of based on the filters that I have in play? And then all I did was rank them. Now I took the descriptions off, but in essence, and they would typically have descriptions. So a wide open filter, it would show you that this particular item, that is the inventory value of that item, as it is as of this morning. Well, that might be perfectly acceptable. If we're selling a lot of it, you'd want a lot of inventory because you don't want any stockouts. So having that as a reference, once again, we'll put all this together and you'll see how they all interact in just a second. But I was just taking it at a piece at a time. The fourth stop that I had was geography. So I wanted to know, and I have this filtered for just a couple of regions and a couple of divisions, mainly the West. I wanted to be able to show where we had the most inventory. And so each one of those inventory map over here is showing where the inventory they're most of. So we have a lot there in Salt Lake, a little bit less out west in Fontana, and then a small little minuscule amount, I guess that is in San Carlos. Once again, I don't know if that's right or wrong. All I'm doing is displaying the data points. So I looked at this and I said, well, I'm pretty happy with this. But I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of a balance. I like there to be balance in the dashboards, so I kind of gravitate toward that. Now, I'm not going to ever put something in a dashboard that is unneeded, but I kind of thought that this was still missing something. And so what I did was just, and this was pure accident. This is just playing with the data. And that's the beauty with Tableau is, I always tell people that I'm training, my two favorite buttons are Show Me and the Uh-oh button, which is, go back one. And I probably, if they were true buttons on my screen, they would have the most indentations, okay? So it's the great thing about Tableau is just pull something out and see what it says. And that's what I did. And I pulled inventory value out. And I let that settle in for a second because my Pareto over here is showing these are the most popular items on the left side of the chart. And way over here are the least popular items that we're selling because we haven't sold a lot of them. But I'm seeing something in inventory values down here that are very, very suspect. What's that? I wouldn't have expected to see spikes on the lower end of the Pareto. That means we got a lot of value in inventory that is either we've not sold a whole lot of or we've sold nothing. And that was, to be honest with you, by pure accident. I just pulled it out, see what it said. And this one chart speaks volumes to what's happening. We have things in the yard that have been there, that were manufactured, maybe for a job, maybe an overage or whatever, that are sitting out there with high value. And Oldcastle, like many people that have yards and inventory, we have to count that 4 times a year for auditing purposes. And additionally, it gets better because we can't have the site managers perform the audit. That'd be real easy. We just say, go out in the yard and count it. We have to fly people in so that it's a true audit of the inventory, so we don't have anything go missing. So it's expensive just because it's sitting there using yard space, but it's also expensive because we're flying people in multiple times a year to count it. So what did I do with this? Of course, I played around with this a little bit as well. I made the invoice, the inventory value. I didn't want it to be an area. I want it to be a bar graph. But then I thought, golly, how interesting would it be to segregate this? And this is just where your imagination starts to play. And you go, what if I could take and color those bars and show how much and put it in bins as to how much was actually sold? So I know way out here I've sold close to 0 because that's built into my tooltip. But I really want to see it colored down here. And so what I did was I created a calculated field, once again on inventory value. And it says, if the sum of inventory value is less than or equal to 0, I'm going to give it a 0 label. And else if it's less than 1,000, do something, make it 1K, 5K, 100,000, and then anything above 100,000. Now I'll be honest with you, I played with this because I tried to put it into traditional bins. The colors, there wasn't, the color spectrum was looking a little bit different, and sometimes you'd have little clusters of nothing sold and then wides of thousands. But this seemed to work. This seemed to kind of spread it out. So this was a little bit of just trial and error. But when I drop that on now, color, now I am seeing, based on color, these are what we're selling a tremendous amount of. This is what we're selling 5,000 or less. or 100,000 or less, 5,000 or less, 1,000 or less, nothing. We've not sold anything. And so the user can really quickly see exactly what has, what's out there in the yard. He can look at those spikes. Sometimes there's an explanation for it. And I'll give, and that's just one of the beauties with Tableau. I know that we've not sold any of this, but there may have been a job that's come up that they're ramping up for. So there's a perfectly good explanation for some of these, but not for all. So putting that all together, and I'll kind of expand this. So putting that all together, I went from that first dashboard to this 4-pane dashboard, and you can see at a real high glance, how much inventory value you have at any one time. You can, and I want to mention this too. I'm crazy about a couple of things. One is calculated fields and how they're structured, but also you should format your hovers and your tooltips for a good experience. And so you see what I do is, in addition to letting Tableau take and put the gray and the bold with the numbers, I format it. I also added a little narrative about the Pareto, because the Pareto can be a little bit intimidating, especially if you're a site manager and you're not used to consuming business intelligence and graphs. So the narrative, as you slide up and down the Pareto, it's telling you exactly what you're seeing. Based on the selected filters, meaning the quick filters on the right, that this item that I'm hovering on now is ranked 262 out of your 2012 items. That means that 13% of your items constitute 79% of your revenue. And so you build in narratives to explain exactly what they're seeing. The beauty with this as well is if they want to just left click and drag and grab everything that's not been sold, now up in the upper right, once again, we've got this filtered, and the data's been augmented, so it's not true real live data. But you can see just for this one division, $500,000 of inventory on the yard that has not had any sales. In fact, you're seeing, well, why is it showing minus 17,442? That's because some of these items, there's actually been returns. So it's not that we've not sold anything. Some of this inventory has been returned back to us from a customer, and so it's really, we're in the negative with it. And again, they can filter on any one of, whether it be last 12 months, year to date, and it works that quick. So what we've found is you have to be able to communicate properly exactly what you to the site managers, so that they get it right out of the gate. They don't want to have to look through a series of crosstabs to get their answer. Bake it in and make it as interactive as possible, because once again, they're able to now select and interactively look and see exactly what they have the most item of. So that item there, if we haven't sold it, why is there so much of it in the yard? There was one additional point that I added to this that actually helped clear the way for our production. We have sales data, of course, as this is using. We have inventory data, but then I went to our yarding data and I looked to see when it was last produced. And you can see this specific item in the tooltip out there is showing that it was last produced in November 9th, 2015. So actually 3 different data sets all combined to tell one story. And when this is wide open, it is shocking to see the numbers. It's actually, we debuted it a few months ago to our site managers, and we had maybe 10 site managers from different places. And it was almost like a betting game. It was like I was at a Las Vegas casino, because they would go, oh, let's see this division. Oh, no, let's see this. So it was right out of the gate, even before it was in their hands. They were excited to see what they could do with the data set. So let me go back to my PowerPoint real quick. So what is this data saying, and what is it using? It's looking at 223 facilities, 136,000 SKUs. Once again, SKU proliferation, we've got to address. We have entirely too many. Even in that small sample, when you see 263 out of 2,000 SKUs that are making up 80%, the question is, why are you even bothering with that other 20%, that other 20% of SKUs, or the other SKUs that are making up the 20%, 1,500. When you think about it from a manufacturing side, when you set up an item, there's a lot of expense to that. You've got people inputting it. What we're doing is when we make a product, we're making it in what we call a muffin case. We have a mold and we're pouring concrete in. There's a lot of money in that mold. Just creating a new product like that, there's a lot of risk. And so you certainly don't want to exacerbate that by having a lot of inventory if it's not selling. This is looking at 339,000 inventory records, 9 million production records, and 43 million sales records. There's no way, now that's all in here, somewhere. But there's no way to get the answer as quickly than with pointing a tool like Tableau. So once again, millions of dollars. What the initiative right now is that we are looking to sell that inventory and get it off the yards, even if it means putting it in some type of seconds warehouse, liquidating it. Because when you think about it, it's taking up yard space, it's crushing pallets because it's sitting there month in and month out, and getting that off. There'd be no way to have performed that complex series of data analysis with a spreadsheet or even looking through one of these books. So my final point is we're using Tableau to make changes like this to our really across sales, across production, across our warehousing, and it has been working great for us. With that, do we have any questions? We're going to ask that you have a microphone because they're taping this, and we want to make sure we get the question as well.
I was curious whether you have the ability to look at sales forecasting as well, so you could make rational decisions about how to liquidate or get rid of that excess inventory.
We are using, we are in the beginning stages of using sales forecasting. We are looking at using both Tableau's native forecasting tool, but also looking at supplementing that with R and some other outside sources as well.
Hi there. Were you able to use this data set to change the conversation from, too much inventory to not enough inventory and out of stock and potentially going out of stock?
We're doing the reverse of that now. Is looking. We knew that this was an easy win. Once again, to look at the stock outs, there has to be a little bit of forecasting involved in that. So we are looking at doing the reverse of that. In essence, to help us plan not having stock outs and to better serve our customers.
Hi. You had some, back on your dashboard, looked almost like some documentation on the bottom of one of the sheets.
I did. Let me get to that. I didn't close it. when I was walking through this. Here?
Right, yeah.
Yep, that's just my caption. So typically when you open up a caption in Tableau, it tells you all the filters that are in place. And so rather than showing you all the filters in place, I just erased all that information and put a step-by-step to keep me on track, which it didn't do, but there's another good point too. And I'm glad you called that. One of the things that you'll see in all of our dashboards is this hover here. And I cannot tell you how important it is to have some type of hover that tells you about the dashboard, right? And the beauty with this is it's so simple to implement. And we just generically call it our help screen. So what we do with this is we right-click and pull over the minimum number of records in the data set, which should be typically, if you have a data set, 1, right? So it's always going to render the value of 1. And that's what we did. I've got a minimum number, the minimum number of records. I then change this to rather than just display the 1, that would be kind of boring, I use a shape, and I use a custom shape. And I use our Oldcastle logo as the custom shape. But here's the real fun part. In the tooltip, we put a little narrative about the work, what the workbook is about. Now, if it's pages long, the workbook's too complex. Okay, it should be just a simple little narrative. It's rarely going to change. The author, once again, is a static. You have to type the author in. But these 3 data points can all be inserted because they live automatically. They're an automatic calculation under the hood for Tableau. And so we put the workbook name, we put the data source of the workbook, and probably one of the most important things is we put the data update time. We'll never have to modify that again. So that when you're hovering over this, because you're using the primary data source, you get a very clean looking tooltip that tells you what the dashboard is about. It tells you who the author or authors are, and it gives you all the information. Now, most of the time, that's to a user, they're not going to worry about when it's updated. But if you're trying to remotely understand, hey, maybe the extract had a problem, maybe it failed, it's a real quick way to see if everything looks to be on schedule. So we put that in all of our workbooks. And it helps with branding. We try to brand so that we have a consistent look to our workbooks, and it also allows the user to help us debug anything in case something has gone astray. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you do, I will be here for the next 15 minutes. Come up and talk to me. I should mention that, let me get that back up, that we would like for you to complete the survey on your app, if you will, and do that on your way out. And if you have any questions, individual questions, I'd welcome to take those for the next 15 minutes. Thank you. You've been great, and enjoy your conference.